So I actually planned on already having this video edited and uploaded, but I actually made a post about this video on my Instagram, or podcast technically. It's a video, but it's a podcast. It's not really anything going on, but we're talking about Skylines. Anyhow. So a little before the video, after the video, I'm getting ready to film another segment that actually comes after the video, and I'm going to try and edit off where I cut it off, because while it's informational, I kind of focus on a few things that I didn't take into consideration. I kind of focused on a certain way to build it, a certain application for what it was kind of supposed to, not necessarily where I would go with it, because if I were to build one, I'd go into detail. By the way, I'm rambling. RHD Drive Specialties commented on my Instagram post involving this podcast. So, got some big pressure to live up to, because RHD Drive Specialties is supposed to come check out my video involving the Skyline GTS-4. So, if you've made it this far, please keep watching. I put a lot of effort into this because I got a lot of weight riding on my shoulders. Hey guys, what's going on? Hardline GTR here. So today for this podcast, I want to talk about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. Maybe some of yours as well. Wow, you can totally see that going on over there. Anyway, and that is the R32 Nissan Skyline GTS-4. Now, I know everybody's in instantaneous shock. Oh my god, he didn't say GTR. But I feel like the GTS-4 needs some background laid about it, and I feel like more information needs put out there about the GTS-4, because of the fact that they're kind of understated for a couple reasons. One of the reasons being that it comes in coupe and sedan. So everybody sees a GTS-4 sedan and they're like, oh, it's a crappy crap. Guys, it's a Skyline. But, all over the internet, I'm seeing all kinds of hate on the GTS-4. I'm seeing, just copious amounts of hate on it. And for a quick reference, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and post here, and here some pictures of a GTS-4 sedan from RHD Drive Specialties. Their link will be in the bio, so you guys can go check that car out. I might even go over it a little bit in this video. I don't know yet. And then I'll put pics of a sedan here, and here. I don't have a company offhand that has a GTS-4 coupe in stock. I may do a little research, and if I do find one, check the description below, because if I do, I'm gonna link it in the bio. Or description, not the bio. Ha. Anyway, so the reason I want to get into this, because of all the internet hate and whatnot, is I just don't think the GTS-4 is known quite what it is in comparison to, say, the GTR. Now, right off rip, you say R32, everybody thinks Skyline GTR, or just Skyline in general. But the thing about the R32 is the R32 actually come in a couple different models. You have the now there are multiple models inside this, and I'm gonna try and bust this list out as fast as I can, because I think the understatement of how many different models the Skyline came in is kind of pertinent information to just the realization that Skylines aren't just as basic as everybody thinks. You have the GXI, the GXI Type X, the The Type X only came in sedan. GTE, GTE Type X, GTE Type V, GTE Type SV, and the GTE... Oh, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. The GTE Type X or the GTE Type X Point V, the GTE Type SV, and the GTE Type V sedan. All of those were sedans. Now you get into the GTS, the GTS SV, the GTS V, the GTS Type J, the GTS Type X, and the GTS Urban Road, available in coupe and sedan for the entire GTS line. Then you got the GTS-T, the GTS-T Type M, the GTS-T Type S, available in coupe or sedan. You have the GTS-4, which is what we're talking about today, available in coupe and sedan. You have the GTS-25 SV and the GTS-25 Type X. You have the GTS-25 Type S and the GTS-25 Type XG. Then you had the Autech version GTS-4 sedan. Special note, there was only 201 of those made. You're not going to commonly run into these. Special notes, they were only available in auto, and they actually used a naturally aspirated, non-turbo 2.6 liter RB26. Yeah, tell me that one's not weird. If you know your Skyline information. For those that you don't know, like, it's kind of a big deal. Next, of course, is the famous GTR, which is the all-wheel drive with the RB26. The Tommy Kyra M20. It's based on a GTS-T coupe, but it's just a rear-wheel drive with some sparkly badges and some tuning. The Tommy Kyra R, based on the GTR, with a tuned RB26, some specialty badges, and some tuning. The HKS-0R, based on the GTR, which came with a 2.7 liter with some pretty badges, some special tuning, and some little trinkets here and there. And then you had the Tommy Kyra M30, which was based on a GTS-T coupe, just like the other one, except this one had a tuned RB30 non-turbo. But like I said, we're talking about the GTS-4, and in comparison to the lesser and some of the higher up counterparts. So what sets the GTS-4 apart from, say, the GTS-25, the GTS-T, the GTS, the GTE, and the GXI is the fact that the GTS-4 is the only other of the R32 Skyline that came with all-wheel drive other than the GTR. It actually uses the same all-wheel drive system as the GTR. So the last thing I was talking about was the all-wheel drive Atessa system. The gearbox is not identical, but they're capable. It's got some slightly different gear ratios. But I mean, realistically, if you wanted to later on down the road swap to a GTR gearbox or a Stagia gearbox, I highly recommend a Stagia gearbox. Fully bolt in. Fully bolt in. Fully bolt in. From there, you got the RB20 DET. RB20 is just not a likable platform. the RB20 makes relatively low horsepower numbers. I think 201, 210 horsepower and just under 200 foot-pounds of torque. For as heavy as the GTS-4 is, like, that's not impressive numbers at all. The turbo's pretty laggy. I don't believe they have a side mount intercooler set up in the GTS-4. I could be wrong. Probably should have looked into that a little more before I spat it out of my mouth, but I'm sure some no-life somewhere is going to tell me down in the comments that it does, or that I'm right that it doesn't. I think it was a little more preferable. Anyway, like, the RB20 is just not the best platform for this setup. So, realistically, if you wanted to take an RB25 DET out of a Nissan Stagea with the matching all-wheel drive 5-speed transmission with the Atezza, which is the 4-wheel drive, same that's in the GTR, you then have a car that from the factory was within 3 pounds of the GTR. You're now 0.1 liter of displacement from the GTR, and your gearbox is a little beefier. This car would be capable of 500 all-wheel horsepower all day long. I think there's a lot of questionable data out there on this, and unfortunately, because of the fact that it's not the GTR and there's a lot of misconceptions about the chassis, because, like I said, it is the only other all-wheel drive one out of the Skylines in the R32s. There may be multiple models with all-wheel drive in the later Skylines. I'm not a huge R33 fan. I know that ticks some people off. Some people think the R33 is the most beautiful GTR in existence. Jimmy Oaks. Anyway, the R33 is just not my cup of tea. I don't particularly like the front end. The rear end's not miserable, but I'm not a huge fan of the front end. The R34, of course, is beautiful, amazing. But with the rising cost of Skylines, the rising cost of R34s, and they're not even legal in the United States yet, you know, it's kind of one of those, I've not put the time and effort into researching and building the R34 the way that I would an R32, because whereas, like, right now, the R32 is legal. And it's pretty rare to see an R32 non-GTR over 30 grand. I mean, 30 grand's a lot. Like, don't mistake that. Like, between 20 and 30 grand, like, that's a lot. But I know when I first started putting myself out there to purchase a Skyline, the R32s, at least like the sedans, the GTS-T, the GST, GTS-4, they were 12, 13 grand. Like, they weren't shit. I don't offhand remember what the cost of the GTS-4 sedan is on RHD Drive Specialties website right now, but just fair to say, like, they're speculatively cheaper. GTRs in the R32 are getting upwards of 45, and they estimate that they're headed towards like the 55,000 mark before this is all said and done. And that's not counting like when like the stock is completely deplimited. Once the stock has been completely depleted, I don't even know what I was saying before. Depleted. Once the stock is completely depleted, the prices are going to go even higher. And so, like, at this point, I feel like it's worth mentioning the GTS-4, because not everybody can afford, you know, a GTR, which is, like I said, pushing near the 40 and 45,000 mark. Right-hand drive Specialties does not appear to have one on hand at the moment. Okay, for a couple minutes, let's talk modability of these cars. Say you wanted to build a GTR. I kind of briefly touched base on that in another part of this video, video podcasting, but I don't know where this is going to be in relevance to that. So, one thing I do have to say is these cars have like an infinite list of modifications. I mean, same with the rear-wheel drive Skyline, but if you're focused on a GTR-like performing vehicle, this is the one. You're just not going to get a Skyline that performs like a GTR without getting a GTS-4. You can get an RB26 in a GTS-T or a GTS or a GXI, like any of them. They're just not going to perform the same because they don't have the all-wheel drive. That being said, not everybody's in love with the sedan. Guess what? You can get a coupe, and it'll look even more like a GTR when you're done. That's pretty cool. But here's what I want to mention about all the interesting little tidbits that you just don't typically see on other Skylines. The cluster looks very similar to that of a GTS-T, and except it's got a torque split gauge, which is really, really helpful tool when you're trying to like cut down track times for time attack or autocross. It lets you know how much power you're delivering to the front wheels to try and get an idea of where you're losing grip at, where you could pick up some grip if you could figure out how to adjust, like be on throttle more. So maybe like the rear tire slip and the front grip a little more so you come in the curve harder. Like a torque split gauge is actually a really, really helpful tool for a lot of different things. Which is super, super cool and exclusive to the GTS-4. But we're on the subject of modability. You can run GTS-T Type M stuff on these, and it looks good. You can run some GTR stuff on the exterior, looks good. Interior, you can run a full R32 GTR interior, and it looks bitchin'. But not everybody loves, like, factory seats. I mean, personally, I would use R32 GTR rear seats. I don't know. I said that, now I want to take it back. I don't know. I don't know. If I was going to try to make one look completely factory and like super, super sleeper, I would use R32 GTR seats. But I probably wouldn't do that, because that's probably not what I would run with. Because I would probably run a reclinable back Recaro, because that's my preference. But we're getting off topic. You can use the factory GTR steering wheel, or you can get a hub and a steering wheel, and like numerous companies make hub and aftermarket steering wheels. You can get an Atessa controller like the one for the GTR to use on the GTS-4, which allows you to control the amount of power that is being delivered to the front diff, which is also comes in hella handy with that torque split gauge. I know, of course, then if you wanted to keep the stock RB20 in it, you can still do a ton with ethanol, switching over to ethanol, E85, upgraded cams. I may have mentioned this in my video, I may not have. I think I mentioned it in the other video that I originally filmed to do this segment. I think HKS might make a VCAM for the RB20. I could be horribly wrong. I don't know. I've never personally looked. I know they make it for the RB25 and for the RB26. Now, if you don't know what HKS VCAM is, HKS VCAM is a camshaft designed by HKS to function like variable valve timing or variable cam timing specifically. And if you don't know what that is like it in comparison to traditional adjustable cam timing that has little springs and your electronic sensor repositions it ever so slightly and advances it and retards it and advances it and retards it. This does it hydraulically with the head. I don't know the entirety of how it works. I have the general basis of how it works. It is what it is. Anyway, aftermarket ECU are always a good upgrade on these cars because they were never programmed to run with the fuel that we have here in the States. And you can get them tuned to run on the fuel here in the States, but it's believed that it cuts down on power. I don't know. It's speculative. I'm sure if you talk to a good importer, they could probably give you a good explanation on that and how well it works. If they feel like there's a power loss, I don't know. I digress. But with the aftermarket ECU, you can upgrade fuel pumps, you can upgrade ejectors, you can put a boost controller on it, and you can tune for these things. Then, like I said, with the HKS Atessa controller, HKS VCon Atessa controller, there may be other Atessa controllers out there. That's the one that I'm most familiar with. But like I said, that allows you to control power being delivered to the front wheels, or allows you to dial it all the way back and make it a rear-wheel drive car. Want to do some skids, bruh? That was dumb. I can't believe I did that. Creator privileges reboot. There's just a ton of modability in these cars, and because they're not GTRs, they get cast aside. And I really hope that by doing this video, I can get a little more reach out into the webs of the internet and get people to understand that a GTS-4 is not a car to be slept on. And at the end of the day, say you want a GTR, and we'll say 500 all-wheel horsepower. 500's pretty common without 485, 450, 485. 450 to 500. That's where we'll put it. 450 to 500. Now with an RB20 and the RB20 all-wheel drive transmission, that's probably not a realistic number, because I think the RB20 itself is only good for like 300, 350. There's a lot of information on what it's good for. But an RB20 manual transmission, 5-speed, two-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, is capable of holding 400 pretty okay with a few clutch kicks here and there. Like, it's not going to let you bash the crap out of it, clutch kick it all the time, but it can tolerate it. You know, of course, like everything, like torque number is what affects that more than anything. But you should have a pretty similar torque number around 400 horsepower to just enjoy it. Now, after that, one of the things that comes into question is, well, where would your next move be? And everybody's instantly like, oh, 5-speed GTR transmission. Wrong. 5-speed GTR transmission would be fully capable of what you want to do, but there's another alternative. The Nissan Stagea. And now the best part of this is this would allow you to get kind of a full 2-for-1 deal. The Nissan Stagea has an all-wheel drive with an Atessa system attached to an RB25. Alright, now as I was saying in that last clip, the Nissan Stagea came with an RB25 all-wheel drive, or RB25 all-wheel drive, and that makes it a superior swap candidate into the GTS-4 because the GTS-4 is all-wheel drive. You do have to match rear ring gear ratio in the diff, or you can swap GTR gears in it, or you can keep the GTS-4 gearing and swap it over to the RB25 transmission. It's really all... Your end goal is to not pull a Tommy F, and be cruising at 4,500 RPM going down the highway at 75. That is a lot of revs, and while RB is known for its revs, that's a lot. You want to be able to drive and enjoy the car while not burning every single bit of fuel that you have in it. And unfortunately, if you mismatch gear ratios, then you have the problem of you're gonna mess something somewhere up. And also, little thing to keep in mind here is shorter gears do make you faster, acceleration-wise, but they kill top end. So you have to kind of find that middle ground. And everybody says the 411 gear is a pretty fair middle ground. I think the Stagea actually runs a 408, which is a little long.
Whoa! That was
It all depends on your power number and what you're planning on doing. But with a Stagea all-wheel drive and RB25 swap, you should be capable of that 450 wheel horsepower, 500 all-wheel horsepower number reliably and not be in, but we'll just fair round number, we'll say 40 grand. Now, getting that number in a GTR, you want to start with a good GTR, and then you want to spend do all the upgrades to make it look nice, get that low, get that nice drivability with good coilover suspension, nice roll bars, arms and everything. You're going to spend more doing the GTR. So whereas it's $40,000 for your nice fully built GTS-4 that you even swap some GTR panels and say a spoiler on, you spent 40 grand. You did the same thing to the GTR. You know, you got a nice lip kit, you got some Nismo skirts, or maybe some knockoff Nismo skirts, some different skirts, you know, spats, N1 front bumper, just typical common GTR mods, and you go for that 500 all-wheel horsepower, you're in 65,000. Why spend the extra 25,000 just because it says GTR when you can have something that performs, still looks very similar? To me, it doesn't make any sense, especially considering I have kids. I like the four-door, I like the sedan. Again, not everybody likes the sedan. You can always build a coupe this way as well. The GTS-4 came in sedan and coupe. And that's also a kind of turnoff for some other people of the GTR, is that the GTR came in only coupe. But you could build this GTS-4 sedan like a GTR. If you wanted to do a full GTR swap in a GTS-4, I'm still convinced that you would spend less money than it would be to buy a GTR. I mean, it is what it is. Not everybody likes that mentality. They're like, just buy a GTR. But honestly, a lot of things are pretty plug and play in these chassis, including with stuff out of the S chassis. If you want to delete HICUS on a GTR, you use an S14 rear subframe. Common brake upgrades for these cars is Z32 calipers, which are bigger Brembo brake calipers. And they're dual piston instead of single piston clamp style. For the money and what you get, a GTS-4 that you can build is better than a GTR that needs to be built. Or a GTR that you're very quickly going to be like, no, I need to build it. Because still, you get a GTR and you're going to start out unhappy. Like, you're going to be like, oh, this is really, really cool. And once the new wears off, you're going to be like, oh, I have a $40,000 paperweight because I'm now doing excessive amount of mods to try and get this where I want it to be, when I knew I was probably going to do this from the get-go, and I could have started with the GTS-4, and the transformation would have been much more noticeable, much more abundant, and, less cost. I don't know, it baffles me the amount of hate these cars get on the internet, because they really are the superior Skyline chassis, excluding the GTR. And, all the time I see people that don't own Skylines or don't do their research hating on GTS-4s. And at the end of the day, those of us who know are going to be the ones that, when it comes time and we get the money, are going to be able to lock down that GTS-4 because people are hating on them. Because they're like, oh, it's all-wheel drive. Or they don't know it's all-wheel drive. And they're like, that's so stupid. That's a GTS-T. Why would I pay that much for a GTS-T called a GTS-4? We're going to be the ones to know to lock down them GTS-4s. I'm telling you, your boy here has got his eye on one. If I had more of a following, I'm telling you right now, I'd be locking down this one with RHD Specialties. This car is clean. It is super, super, super nice. The only thing that you can say about this car, which is super common in almost every other Skyline, it has a dash bubble. And like the notorious dash bubble on the Skylines on the passenger side. That's it. Otherwise, this car is mint. On that note, back to whatever clip I interrupted to put this in. If they do, I'm going to post it right here. And I'm going to slap a price tag underneath it. See, here's a 1989 R32 sedan. I will post a couple pictures right here of this car. And I may cut this out right here. So that was the spec sheet. But it is a manual. It's a non-turbo, but this is only $12,000. The GTS-4 in question is $19,500. And one of the things you have to consider with this is, like, this also involves the cost of importing, the cost of housing this vehicle for so long. Like, no one seems to take that into consideration when pricing this stuff, and they're just like instantly, oh, that's ridiculous. But, there are fees for paying to bring this car over here. There are fees that are paid to bring this car into the country once it gets here. There are fees paid to register this car and get it a stateside title. It's just, these cars are not cheap at all. Not even a little bit. And I feel like at times people don't understand that when they're just like, oh, I want a GTR. I know prime example, me and a friend of mine, we built factory spec R35 Skylines when they were new, black editions. I want to say back in 13 for the 14 model. And the cost of them was roughly what it... Now, mind you, they were illegal, but was roughly the cost of what it would cost us to have gotten a chassis that we couldn't have legally registered, mind you, but a chassis that we would have much rather had for an R35. The R34s, we had priced 2 of them, and the first one, to get it here, mind you, I'm not sure how we would have pulled off getting it into the country once we got it here, but purchasing the car, getting it here in a way that we could at least have it into our possession, not registerable. We do still currently have a policy in the United States where if a vehicle is recognized as something as it's not, like an illegal import, they can seize and crush the vehicle for being on public roadways. It gets a little more complicated if it's not on a public roadway, but they can ask you to provide documentation at any given point if it is on a public roadway. And, it's just kind of one of those... So many of them have already been on U.S. streets and have been wrecked. There were probably several 100,000 that were wrecked in other countries before they got here. And there are people now that buy them for strictly stripping them down and parting them out, because you can still make more money stripping them down and parting them out. But yeah, R32s right now, there's one for 45 right there. There's one for 30. There's one for 40. The R32 GTRs are just, they're going up. And I remember when you could buy one for $24,000. When I first started, I will have a Skyline this year, a couple years ago. And, now the prices are just insane in comparison. That being said, obviously, the GTS-4 is still one of the more desirable out of the chassis. I mean, some people disagree. They'd rather get a GTS-25 or a GTS-T. But personally, the GTS-4 is the way to go. Because of the fact that you cannot convert the other chassis over to all-wheel drive without cutting out a floor pan and putting in a different floor pan. Then with the different floor pan, you have to convert parts of the dash, because the floor pan is a different height because it has an indentation for the front transfer case for the all-wheel drive. But anyway, so back to the topic at hand. I really think they're 350 all-wheel horsepower to 400 all-wheel horsepower, which is still more than plenty. Still is gonna skid things on the street with the stock RB20 trans in it. And Stagias, like I said, I think are good to 550. I think they're a lot closer to the GTR trans. The GTR 5-speed manual trans is good for 700 horsepower. And then, of course, you can swap over to the 6-speed get drag and get well over that. I've seen get drags that hold 1100 horsepower. They're insane. But so you do the Stagia swap, or you stick with the stock RB20 trans. The RB25 bolts right in, and all you have to do is have... There's some speculation on whether or not this will work, but the RB25 Stagia oil pan and oil tube pickup, or the GTS-4 oil pan because the front diffs are mounted, and oil tube pickup, and bolted onto the RB25. Some say the RB20 oil pan slash front sub slash front diff will bolt right up. Others say it won't. I've personally not ever seen one. In person. I've seen some videos. They all look really extremely similar, but it's the minute differences that get you in this type of thing. But either way, you at this point will need to make sure the gear ratios match, at which point you can take the diff out of the RB20 oil pan and put it into the RB25 Stagia oil pan, or you can just get a GTR rear diff or GTR matching diffs, or you can even upgrade to the R34 diffs, which are a little beefier. It's all in how you want to modify it. Please, by all means, do your research before you just slap parts into this thing. But, man, you can make a all-wheel drive, 4-door GTS-4 monster that is capable of competing with the GTR, honestly, at a fraction of the cost of buying and getting a built GTR. Because, realistically, aftermarket ECU, $1,000. Aftermarket harness, $2,000. RB20, $5,000. Or RB25, not RB20. RB25, $5,000. Now, bits and pieces here and there might, like clutch. We'll say you have to get another clutch. We'll chop another $600 in there. You want to use the RB25 clutch, by the way, or an upgraded RB25 clutch. You want to have a pretty good, not factory clutch in there if you're going to build for power. And then, realistically, you could do it probably still less than what it would cost to buy a bone stock GTR. Now, here's where some stuff gets kind of complicated. The GTS-4 looks like a GTS-T or a GTS or a GXI. They're just not exactly the most pleasant-looking things in the world. They got a little pig nose thing that I'll pop right in here because I'll have the GTS-4 coupe in earlier vids, but we'll go ahead and put that one there too. They're just kind of pig noses. And if you look here at the GTR nose, it was also on the black 4-door GTS-4 that I popped in earlier. The GTR front end just looks better. It's more sporty, it's more aggressive. That being said, you can still buy some really cool stuff to make the GTS-4 look more aggressive, look more GTR-like, and not look quite as grandma car-ish. If you want to spend the time and wait, some GTS-4s had a sunroof. You do lose some structural rigidity with a sunroof. That is something to keep in mind if you plan on track building one of these cars. Me personally, I want one with around 400 horsepower to all four wheels, and I want to be able to just take it out on the road, enjoy it, take it out to the track, and beat on it a little bit. I don't want anything that's going to destroy everything on the street. I would like to be able to harass some 5.0s and whatnot, but that's all. I don't want a powerhouse. But you guys might, and that's what this is here for. Because if you're set on a GTR, those prices are just through the roof. You can also swap an RB26 into these. Like, there is no special modification. It bolts right to the trans as long as you use you you can use the RB26 stock oil pan here. You don't have to get a different one without the front diff set up because you have a car with the all-wheel drive that would require the front diff. At which point, all you have to do is switch to a GTR diff and then change the axles and hubs. I'm going to recommend using the Stagia the Stagia oil pan with the Stagia diff setup if all possible, because I forgot to run GTR axles. You have to swap over to GTR hubs, which are not what comes stock on the GTS-4. However, the GTS-4 does have 5-lug hubs. But then how do you put GTR wheels on a GTS-4? You know, I think someone lied to me somewhere. I think that I know the brakes are different. Yep, you know what? I was lied to. You don't have to get different hubs. You might have to get different hubs for axle size. I think that's what it was. The bolt pattern is the same. You can run GTR wheels, but you cannot run GTR axles. So at which point you have to get all GTR hubs. And the original version of this video, and I think I touched base on it a little earlier, is unfortunately the GTR parts suffer from something what's known as the GTR tax, same as the RB26, which in theory you can get your hands on a little easier, but not necessarily cheaper than an RB25, because of the fact that Nissan actually just recently launched their Nissan Heritage line, where they are now making brand new RB26s. Tell me that's not awesome. Anyway, I digress. Not the point. The point is talking about the amazingness of GTS-4 and why I don't understand the internet is crapping on it. The platform is just fully capable, and I think it's incredibly slept on because people don't understand. I would like to give a huge shout out to Right Hand Drive Specialties. They are not a sponsor. However, these pictures of the GTS-4 that I'm using for this video and for the next video, well, not the next video, the next video that's not a podcast, anyway, came from Right Hand Drive Specialties out of Kent, Washington. They are an importer. They can source any import that you can want. Thing about them sourcing your import, though, is unfortunately they only do cash buys if you want them to go out of their way to find you an import. However, if you just search through their inventory, you see something that you want, and they are in love, and you are in love with something in their inventory, call them up. They've got lenders. They can finance you depending on your credit score, and there's a few other things, but they finance them as classic cars. So I do believe that you have to have a 650 or higher, or maybe it's 600 or higher. You have to have a pretty good credit score to finance with Right Hand Drive Specialties, but anybody that honestly finances imports is going to tell you that you have to have a pretty high credit score because they're classic car lenders. It's just what it is. But Right Hand Drive Specialties always brings in super clean examples of some of the best imports on the market, and even some really odd imports on the market. And they will work really hard to get you set up with something that they have, if you want something that they have. And if you're a military veteran, or if you're active military or a veteran, excuse me for not being able to speak, they will, they offer a discount program. These guys also ship nationwide. Right Hand Drive Specialties really is an all-in-all import business out of Kent, Washington. If you are in the market for an import, specifically a GTS-4, the one featured in this video, hit up Right Hand Drive Specialties. I really think that's all I've got to say tonight, guys. You guys should be happy that I was here because I could have been making TikToks. And right now I am thriving on TikTok. I hope to be seeing more of my TikTok viewers here soon on my YouTube platform. So with that, we are going to finish this night off and what honestly probably should have been my sign off from the get-go. But for some reason I keep forgetting about it, or like I keep getting so caught up because like I'm still not the most entirely comfortable speaking to the camera, which is weird considering the amount of content that I've filmed at this point. But anyway, if you guys like this podcast, if you liked my rambling about a specific model, if there's a specific model that you would like me to do in the future of Skyline or any import or even American cars, I've got a ton of things on American cars too, just because I like to do my research. I have more downtime than I care to admit. Well, that's not entirely true. My brain is always trying to find the next thing to focus on. Hashtag ADHD. Anyway, I like this kind of video, or podcast. These are really, really fun. They're informative, and I feel like people get a lot of information, and I can clear up some cloudy areas, especially considering in the U.S. area, people just don't know as much about imports. And of course you have guys like me and other guys and other YouTubers on the scene that know more and just don't really share as much information with the public as they can. And that's something I personally want to do differently. I have rambled on and rambled on, and I'm done rambling on. It is time to leave this video. You guys have been great. If you stayed this whole time, most of you probably didn't, but that's okay. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe for more. If you want an import, visit the link down in the bio. If you just want to leave an insanely inappropriate comment below. And with that, guys, I'm going to say goodnight. So, this is me signing off for tonight. Okay, so I don't know exactly where this clip's going to end up, but it'll be in here somewhere, and you're obviously seeing it now. I just want to take a second to, just talk about how this particular Skyline GTS-4 that I'm using for, a base visual reference, is brought in by RHD Specialties out of Kent, Washington. And this is a very, very, very clean example of what a GTS-4 should be and could potentially be, as it does have some aftermarket parts on it, from the S14 wheels to the GTR hood, headlights, grille, and front bumper. This car is sick. That being said, it also has more that it could be done. But as far as mileage goes, it is not the most common thing in the world to see one of these cars being imported with such high mileage. I mean, it's only like 136,000. I don't remember exactly what the kilometers number was. I think it might have been like 202. I'm going to try and put it right there if I remember. Anyway, it is just a really, really clean car. It's got, like I said, 136,000 miles. The AC still works. The heat works. The Atesta system is still functioning properly. I mean, what more could you ask for? Now, cool thing about RHD Specialties is when they bring this car in, they do a full service and tune-up. That means timing service, which is important on RB motors. And if you don't know that, make sure you know that before you buy that car. Like, if you want a Skyline, RBs are particular about timing service. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, they really have an exceptional car. Once again, one final thank you to RHD Specialties for bringing wonderful, wonderful imports and having such clean stock and product and working as well as they do to provide JDM security in the US of A.